In terms of our agenda for today, we have Kevin O'Rourke providing us with some news from CloseReach and also an update on QualiWare 10.4. We will have a featured presentation today, which is really a do-over from November with the slides this time. And if you were on the November meeting, you know what I'm talking about. Earl Fisher from PSPC is going to go over the BPMN modeling guide and do that for us today. I'm going to provide an update on where we are with our QualiWare Roadmap input process. I've met with a few of you. We've met with a few of you so far. And then Kevin's going to provide us with a protected B cloud update. And then we'll have time, hopefully, for open discussion, Q&A at the end, or throughout, of course, if anybody has questions or wants to comment on anything. We all know each other at this point, so please take yourself off mute. At least most of us know each other. Take yourself off mute and feel free to jump in. With that, I will hand it over to Kevin to provide us with our CloseReach news.
Great. Thanks very much,
and
Lucille.
hopefully my slide will work to go down. There, there you go. Okay.
There you go. Well, a few things. JVL joined us at the end of last year, and we may have mentioned that in our November meeting. So he's fully on board now and help working with Rishav and Scott to get up to speed in our technical environment and the support side of things. And also Leanne Flood, who has joined us. Yvonne Hale, for those who knew her, has left us for a larger organization. She wanted to move more into the HR space, but Leanne has joined us as proposal writing and recruiting specialist, and she's helping us to look after some contracting things that are going on. So. And we're currently interviewing for some additional architects and technical support in the, to continue to grow our team in the company, because the demand for our services is growing. So, which is great. It means bigger adoption, throughout the government, but also within the private sector space. And we've have a big push on in the municipal space, and we are picking up the GSRM meta model that we developed many years ago and putting that through a bit of a rework. So that's a service-oriented architecture meta model that was developed for CVSA initially, that we make available to any department that wants to use it. And we're just in the process of revitalizing that in the municipal market, which is actually where it came from. The municipal reference model was, I guess, an earlier iteration that evolved into the GSRM. So you can watch for some updates on our website about that. We've got at least one department that wants to make some changes to it to add some attributes and some content. So as part of our new app market initiative, we are just working out the governance around being able to manage that and coordinate updates to those departments that are using it. We don't have an update on the contract extension for the GCEA solution contract. Our PSPC contact there, Montar Fall, was off for the first part of January and is just back. So we'll be working with them and with CVSA. I guess the initial, what we're looking at short term for the next year is extending the current contract for an additional year so that something longer term can be put in place to keep, maintain our ability to provide software services and training all under that vehicle. So around that contract, we're currently preparing the maintenance and support software quotes. The end of May is when the most of the software terms, maintenance and support terms, come due. There are some around fiscal year end, and we've already been dealing with some of those. But the majority of them happen to be around timed around the end of May. So you can expect to see quotes coming out from customer care, from Cecile and the accounting group, so that you have that information well in advance to get the contract, whatever contract approvals you need in place. So just a bit of a heads up on that. We actually have some licenses for which the software maintenance and support was not paid for last year. The particular client who was using those licenses determined that they did not need as many, and so we have redistributed some of them, but we actually have 16 architect licenses and about 94 of the web user, the QEP collaboration licenses, which we can redistribute to other departments, but you have to catch up the maintenance and support. So the normal cost of an architect license is $3,900, and the annual maintenance and support is $780. So you would have to catch up this year's maintenance and support. But in other words, you could acquire a license for $780 for a full architect's license. The QEP web user licenses, which we're now distributing as collaboration licenses, the maintenance and support on those is $4.80. So we have 94 of those. So if anyone who's interested, you can communicate with Cecile, and we can arrange to have those licenses transferred to your particular department. But you obviously they've lost. There's only a 5-month period between now, 4 months now, between now and the end of the maintenance and support year. You'll be paying $780 to catch up the maintenance and support, and then having to pay for it for next year. But cheaper than buying it from paying full price. So if anyone's interested, please let Cecile know, and we'll talk to PSPC about doing that transfer. We have some training updates. We have some new courses coming online, and for those that haven't seen, when you go to our website now and click on training, we now have the training marketplace where we are starting to, we have some new courses from Landmark and CBP around their collaborative business planning tool. CBP modeling, so that's financial management and activity-based planning. And they have a course as well as a workshop coming up that will be up there. We have, so there's a new course, and they're tying it in with some lean portions in their workshop as well. So integrating collaborative business planning and lean to really help organizations cost and rationalize their processes. We have 2 new workshops as well that will be going up in the next week. One is 1 day, and this is a CloseReach workshop. It's a 1-day workshop where we will be discussing and covering all of the capabilities associated with a QualiWare Plus, Collaboration Plus license. So there will be web modeling components on that, it might be of interest as well to architects, because as the architect license has more and more models available to it, through the web client. That's the way QualiWare is going. The Windows client will go away, but in the short term, there are some things about how the web client works that we think we can add some value with a one-day workshop. So look for that to come up shortly. And we're also going to have I'm not quite sure the duration. It'll be 3 to 4 hours, so a half day, collaboration workshop. So anybody who would be using the tool as a collaboration user. So doing governance, generating ideas, So this is really aimed at the user community, the consumers of the content. So we'll put the information up on the site and make people aware of it. And if you've got consumers that you want to use your published content, you can direct them to this half-day workshop. We think there's some value there. So 2 new things coming from CloseReach.
And Kevin, we also have the webinar coming up in February as well, the call center optimization webinar.
Yeah, Mike Seeger and I'm not sure if Mike Haley is involved with that, but
yes.
Yeah, it's a call center optimization webinar, essentially taking the work that Mike Seeger has done and combining it with the collaborative business planning to provide some, I think, some good information around using QualiWare for contact centers for costing and optimization. So
in a previous user group meeting, Michael and Mike had provided an overview, a short presentation on each of their products. This webinar is going to cover more in depth the 2 of them together. And an email will be going out, invitation this week to our database to invite you to attend that webinar in February.
Our YouTube channel has continued to expand, so you can see some of the previous presentations, including the one by both Mike Seeger and Mike Haley around the contact center examples. And also our previous, user group meetings and use cases around cybersecurity, around the data modeling and re-engineering, using content pulled directly from, for example, a SQL database. So our YouTube channel is continuing to grow. We're actually looking at a more integrated platform with our training and being able to provide some additional video learning library opportunities. We're still looking at putting that together. So we're looking at a lot of new technology here at CloseReach to make information more accessible to you, our users. In terms of 10.4, 10.4 has been really, sorry?
Kevin, just before you go on, you were going to talk about the data management proof of value.
Yeah, that was going to come a little later.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So 10.4, if you go to the CloseReach website at the carousel at the top, one of the slides has a link to the 10.4 release notes that we've loaded on our website. The 10.4 release notes are also on the QualiWare Center of Excellence and also in the CloseReach blog for those that are subscribed to that and get that when we do posts. We do not yet have a PDF format available, so you can expect to see that in the next few days. So you'll be able to download a PDF and be able to pass that around to whatever change management meetings, etc., that that you need to internally, when you're going to plan and get approvals for upgrading to 10.4. We've asked QualiWare for that in a PDF form, and they're not able to provide that. So CloseReach will be putting that together, and so you'll be able to get that off of our website by the end of the week. And there is a lot of new capability in 10.4. One of them is the complete set of models associated with Archimate are now available through the web modeler. And there's other additional information there. So again, that's part of QualiWare's move from the Windows client to a web-based client, which will continue throughout the year. The standard non-Archimate models, I think we're at about 40% have been converted, and not all of the templates. So you can expect, as I said in our last meeting, we've confirmed with QualiWare that over the next year, that's their thrust for future releases, is to move more and more to the web client. Anybody have any questions about anything so far?
Sue is asking if, oh, go ahead, Sue.
Oh, hi, it's Denise, Kevin.
sorry.
Quick question. The 10.4, what about the folks who've all done custom meta model development? Will they be supported as well?
Yeah, in 10.4, if you've done custom meta models, those will be reflected in the web web client.
So you'll be able to model in the web even for custom models?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
If you've used CaseMaker and have generated the models that way, yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kevin, Sue is asking if you had tentative dates for the workshops. Don't
as yet. We're still working out exactly what we want to cover, I'm assuming you're talking about the two CloseReach workshops, the collaboration and the Collaboration Plus workshops. It will
yeah, I am.
Yeah, it will probably be towards the end of February that we'll be ready to roll those out. But we'll get some dates up in the next week or so.
Oh, so you're thinking this spring / winter spring sort of time frame?
Yeah, end of February. So
okay.
Yeah, there's some new things in 10.4 that we've encountered that we want to make sure we're clear on, so that we can, obviously do a good job with them. So, but we think that there should be a lot of anybody who's taken the QLM course, our QLM Basic or QLM Advanced course that uses the Windows client. You're going to be moving to the web at some point. So, if you're technically minded, you can figure it all out. If not, that's what the one-day workshop is for architects and or Collaboration Plus users. Business process people that might use the tool to do business process models. And the Smart Creator and the ongoing. The meta model is always there present on the website, so telling you what you can join and how and connectors and making all of that a bit easier. But there are some other aspects to be aware of. So, is that okay, Sue?
That's perfect. Oh, sorry, Cecile. Sorry.
No,
that's
fine,
perfect. No. Thank you for the additional information.
Randy, I see you have your hand up.
Hi there. Sorry, I just wanted to know if there's anything on the roadmap for rolling out the ISO UAF meta model.
UAF, I'm not familiar with it.
It's the International Standards Organization. It's called Unified Architecture Framework.
I don't have anything from QualiWare on that. I don't know if it's on their roadmap or not. they haven't announced anything around that. I can ask.
That would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions, folks, for Kevin before we move on?
Actually, Randy, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is that D&D DoD specific, or is that a generic?
Well, the D&D DINDAF framework, its roadmap, as well as DODAF, MODAF, NAF, they
Okay.
all are migrating towards UAF. And UAF is the only international standards organization approved meta model. And since all the militaries are moving to the UAF meta model, I just wanted to know if QualiWare was planning on supporting it within their roadmap and linked up the timeframes and everything else.
Probably anything to do with that then, because it's tied with DINDAF, would be, subject to some discussions with D&D.
Well, I'm not disputing that.
D&D hasn't approached us about doing that, but they've done a lot of, we did the initial DINDAF deployment and customizations, but they've since picked up that and managed all of that now for years. So, Adam, got anything you could comment on about that? Since you're there every day.
I don't think that's specifically come up in any conversations I've been privy to.
Okay. It's just in everybody's PowerPoint, so. But
Yeah.
thanks. Just wanted to know where QualiWare was on it, but I think you've answered my question.
Well, I'll follow up with QualiWare itself, and I have to talk to Vince Cannell about some other matters, so I'll bring this up with Vince as well.
All right, thank you.
Great. I'll report back next month.
This is Kevin Wilson. I have a quick question for Randy Fred. When you say it's on everyone's PowerPoint, does that include Director of Enterprise Architecture?
Yes, yeah, it's in their roadmap. It's been in all their presentations for the past few years, at least the last 5 years.
Okay.
Interesting. All right. I'll follow up with DEA and let everybody know.
Jean-B Rubé here. If you're asking question about UAF, it's if you have the number, it may be easier with QualiWare. It's ISO 19517.
Thank you.
I know that
Thank you.
QualiWare does some work around, some of the more common standards, 9001, and I mean, with QuEDI, we're involved with 17025 and a couple of other things. But yeah, I'm not sure. Everybody seems to be taking refuge in either an OMG standard or in an ISO standard to gain credibility these days, for their framework.
UAF was an OMG standard, and then they got it to the state where they could put it in front of ISO, and it went through the 2-year process and got blessed and is currently the only true international standard for a meta model. So that is an OMG model. They still are proactively working with it and incrementing it all the time now.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Randy. I will check on that and follow up. And I mean, again, if the demand is there, obviously a vendor like QualiWare will look at that and figure out, what the value is for them to pick that up. I'm sure.
Sorry, Kevin, Eric here. What was that ISO number again of the meta model standard?
19517.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Kevin Wilson, you have your hand up. Is that from previous?
Yeah. Hopefully it's done
Okay.
by now.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Just wanted to check that you didn't have another question or a comment or anything. Thank you. Anything else, folks, before we move on this particular topic?
I have one more thing to discuss.
Okay.
So last meeting, I mentioned that we had been busy taking the high-level functional models from the data management book of knowledge and instantiating them in QualiWare, and we've completed that effort. We've built down one or two of those functional models right down to the lowest levels, you know, as a proof of concept kind of framework. We're actually looking for a customer partner to work with us to help further advance that effort, to so that we can look at it and say, you know, there's value in us continuing down that roadmap, and that an organization can make use of the work that we've done, and that kind of standardized framework around the data management book of knowledge and the concepts there, you know, are of some value. So if there's an organization out there that's interested, you know, what it would involve is time from people that are involved around data management, data governance, data quality, you know, looking at the models that we've built and working with us to try to figure out the next step, you know, how we should take that into an operational setting. You know, things like the Book of Knowledge are great from an academic point of view, but to turn that into, you know, actionable processes and other things, yeah, we're looking for some subject matter expert assistance with doing that. So I guess the benefit would be you get the value of what we've done and instantiated in QualiWare, and then at some point, you know, there'll be, as I said in our last meeting as well, we had some work done presented by Carl Drodge around the data management implementation planning, and so this would be integrated, you know, to a degree with that as well. So if there's anyone interested in sort of working on that proof of concept, proof of value with CloseReach, please reach out to Cecile and let her know, and we'll work out the terms and conditions and put together a statement of work for moving that ahead. We will provide at no cost, you know, the work that we've done to date, but really we're looking to carry that to, you know, more of a, if anybody's familiar with APQC, you know, more of a standard framework with performance indicators and all of that type of thing defined. So for that, you know, more complete model, just as APQC does, you know, there would be a cost. So if you're helping us put it together, then there's not. Anyhow.
Kevin, this is Dan. Do you have like a one-page synopsis of what you're looking for?
Yeah, I can send that over to you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll post it after the meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm done.
Is that everything, Kevin?
Yes.
Any other questions from folks before we move on? Okay, so now, without further ado, we are going to move to our featured presentation. Mr. Earl Fisher from PSPC, and who is going to talk to us about the BPMN modeling guide. And Earl, I will switch my screen. And you can direct me and just say next slide whenever you're ready.
Okay, perfect.
From-
So, thank you, Cecile, for doing this. Just to recap from last meeting in November, I was talking about business process modeling notation and what we did in PSPC to map out business processes for pay. So just to recap at the high level, business process modeling notation, BPMN for short, is currently version 2.0.2 as of 2014. It is also an OMG specification, but is ratified as ISO 19510. So very close to the other ISO number that was mentioned earlier, 517. So again, 19510 is the ISO. Business process modeling and notation maps out business processes from end to end. And what we've done in pay is use the BPMN modeling notation templates in QualiWare to do that. So instead of using Visio, which you can use, I won't doubt it, but we find that QualiWare is much more easier and much more effective at capturing business processes. So what we did is use them to map out things like the new retro pay coming shortly for the PA group, as well as other collective agreements that were processed. We used it to map out an escalation process, so problem solving. We used it to map out tax reconciliation with MRQ and CRA and how those processes work. We've also used it to map out internal communication standards and guidelines so that we know when we're communicating to compensation advisors or change agents, the process that's used to disseminate information that has been approved. So in QualiWare, there are, I'm going to imagine the whole gamut is there, over 116 elements. And we found that that was very complex and complicated to map out and have everybody know, because a lot of our mappers are AS4, 5s, and a lot of them don't know the nomenclature. So what we decided to do with Treasury Board, when we were mapping out HR processes to pay, we worked with Treasury Board to produce this draft document that you see on the screen using the framework standards for using QualiWare to map it out. So what we did was we agreed to take those 116 and remove some that we don't need or some that we don't need and just make it much more inclusive to people who are mapping to understand. Because, for example, if you look at just the sequence flow, there are 5 types. And why do we need 5 types of sequence flow when we can actually have normal flow and exception flow, for example? Do we need to have uncontrolled conditional default? If you wanted to map out a critical default path, we could do that using color, for example. So if you wanted to see a critical path, we could do that in the map using red, for example. So we tried to maintain about 50 symbols overall and not use all of them, so that when we're trying to develop a common dialogue, we want to go to the most basic level of communication and keep it simple. Obviously, you know, the KISS principle fell into place. So next page. Next page, we can skip over that. It's just a table of contents. And the purpose and the audience, we can skip over that. So this was designed to talk to managers and directors. So that's what most of this is. So what is business process modeling? And I'm assuming most of this group here is educated enough to know what a business process is and what they model. So we can skip that. And again, what is BPMN, which I just mentioned, is a current industry standard for process modeling, and we can use various elements, pools, lanes, tasks, sequence, gateways, etc. So this you can skip over to, Cecile. Process hierarchy. So we in pay have 5 levels. The first level we use as a sample table of contents. It's the key layer that then decomps into several maps. We use it to explain the end-to-end process flow overall. and how each segment then goes into more complex and decomps. So the lowest level procedures or desktops, we do not map. We avoid that because those can change regularly or can get eliminated and updated, and I didn't want to map out how someone does a step-by-step task. We want to just measure the key business value, which we defined as the business process levels 1 to 5. We usually stop about 3 levels down for most cases. Next. Thank you. So process hierarchy is described here. The process level map, sub-processes, and tasks. Again, a task, we don't map out the tasks, but these are the tasks that are performed, so such as send email, for example. I don't tell people how to write the email. We just map out send email. At the process level, we want to make up the list that illustrates all the linkages between the major sub-processes and what goes through. So once you get to a level 2 or level 3, you'll see the inputs, outputs, gateways. We present communication items. We also present decision points with a couple of yes, no, so exclusive and parallel gateways. You can split up into when things are split and then rejoin afterwards through a process. If there's triggers, we usually put that at the sub-process level. So things with notification, as I said, emails or a timer, please wait for system update 24 hours, or this will run on a Saturday, whatever that you're doing in your processes. We note that we use annotations as well to explain some of the items, and try not to use too much of a description. We do have some rules around it, and one of the things that we do is in a process, we put the verb first. So alert system update, or ensure there is a document, provide guidance, inform partner that report has been run. In the gateways, it's always a question, and we make sure that the gateway is conducive to, if it's exclusive, yes, no, maybe, or if it's parallel, then we provide the activities in the other lanes and swim lanes. We try and keep it as simple as possible because most of the readers of these processes are analysts, officers. There are lower levels. Most of them are between, in my group, AS1 to AS7, who look at these maps and who participate in the maps. So as we get to our stakeholders, we have to keep it simple again, using common language that is understood within Pay Center and Pay, but also refine so that it's not confusing to people to understand. Is when I'm saying send message, are you sending an email? Are you sending a process message? Are you getting a message of an error? So we try and keep it as simple as possible. Next level, next page, sorry. So the key process elements here, which we present and explain to people when they start mapping, is there's an activity, event, gateway, connectors, and artifacts. And we explain what each one of those are. These are the 5 main symbols that we use in our maps. Next page. And then we describe them through. So if you see a process and then it has a little plus at the bottom, it's a sub-process, and then a task at the end, which we use on level 3 or 4. And then we leave it at that. Again, I don't go to the lower level and actually do what the steps of the tasks are. Next page. We talk about events, so we use 3 triggers: start, an intermediate event. An event could have a timer attached to it, for example, or a event as in wait for report, report is issued. End event is at the final step. And for us, what we do is we use the normal colors that come out with QualiWare, so I don't try and change it. We use the green, blue for the start, intermediate, so yellow, and the end event is red. Next page. And then you can see here the process and the triggers. So you can go through all these. These are just the normal BPMN notations.
And we don't use catch and throw anymore because we use bridging instead.
Yeah, we used to use catch and throw, as Elizabeth said, but now we found out that QualiWare offers a great advantage in using a bridging event, which connects the pages a lot easier, and you can scroll in and out faster than using these. Next page. Again, these are the gateways symbols. You can keep going down. There's more than that, but those are the ones that we use. Sequence, message flows, and associate connectors. Typically, the sequence flow and message flow is used most often. Association is used when you're trying to put in artifacts or objects. So, for example, use an association connector to link to a artifact or an annotation and data objects. Next. Again, the data objects, if we're going to an actual object or a repository or data store. Next. So we use annotations. We find that annotations are helpful when there's a complex situation, or we find that there's some people who are going to ask questions about a pending object or a pending process, so we can provide description. So for example, on a, I'm going to use Julie's for example, on a new site build, there's approvals, notifications, schedules, adjustments. So we put that right at the top so we can say this is what we're doing when we're dealing with a business building, for example. It's just additional information. It doesn't really mean a lot, but in pay, sometimes it helps when you're talking about, let's say, a third pay period. We can say on a third pay period, we put an annotation text listed there so we know that the process is slightly different and that they can follow that along, understand what process we're talking about. Next. Of course, these are pools and lanes, which you're all familiar with, so I won't go through that. And we split them up accordingly, trying to keep them the same size. There's a black box and white box tool pools. We usually tend to use the white box pools and not black box. If there's a black box, we would make an annotation to describe that, because they probably wouldn't understand that a pool can have no event start activity. So if you just put an annotation for a black box pool, we find that provides a lot more information to the level of the user. But we do use white box pools and have split pools and split lanes in there quite often. Next page. So this is what I want to get to. These are the common symbols that we use in our processes, and we limited them to these as well as a couple others. But essentially, it's to keep the information when you're looking at a map a lot simpler, a lot cleaner, and a lot more user-friendly for people who don't know how a business process works or have never mapped out something, especially if you're going cross-functional teams where you have people, let's say in Pay Center, Emir and Mashi, and people who work in a department for pay, so they're not Pay Center Link, for example. Transport Canada comes to mind. That's not serviced by the Pay Center. We can talk a common language by using simple processes mapping. And when they go into our process mapping, we find that these basic levels, most people can understand from Visio, so they understand quickly. And then we don't have to go through a whole detail of why I didn't use a certain symbol that they might say, well, I don't understand why a complex gateway has an asterisk in it. Okay, never mind. We just use this exclusive gateway, inclusive or parallel, and then we can map it out accordingly.
We often send that page with first draft of a map so people understand exactly what they will see and why they're seeing it.
Yeah, on a kickoff meeting, this is what we would send. It's true, Elizabeth, as well as explain some of the things I talked about earlier, so that they can at least understand what they're looking at when they get maps to review. Next page. Just a simple tips and tricks. You all have video.
Consistency.
Yeah.
It was with our standards and guidelines.
Mhm.
The verb tenses,
Yeah.
how we would use them, and we were trying to be consistent between TBS and PSPC, so that's why it was done collaboratively.
Right. So that's where I went into using a verb or using a question, starting with a question, making sure that a verb. So when you use the guidelines, we try and use the standard verb tense for our process, and then try and eliminate unnecessary words. Please log into, just go, forget it. Just, we're going into, you know,
The light is implied.
yeah. We know that you have to log in. So do this, do this, do this, do this. Please send email to email group. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Just please send email, and then we just leave it at that, because they should know who and what processes they're going through. And then when they review it, they get it quicker. We have other nomenclature guidelines, such as starting with a capital letter, try and put 20 words or characters in a box, so if we can cut it down. If you can merge boxes together, all the better, because sometimes people want to take step by step by step, and then I'm back into doing a task. Well, I don't want to map those 3 steps. How about just send email and not log into Outlook, log in? No, I don't need to put that. I just send email. Everyone will understand that. Next page.
That's it, unless
Okay.
you want to look at the map.
So if we look at the map, some of the other guidelines that I like to do in my team is I like clean pictures, as Elizabeth knows. So try not to loop back or fork back your lines. You want to go straight. This sometimes takes some time to sort your lanes properly, but I like to go from left to right, and we go in order, so I don't see loop backs with the arrows. Sometimes you can't do it. It's hard, but we try and go forward. So always trying to think, and I think that's something subliminal that I try and get people to understand, because they get, oh, the process keeps moving forward. Okay, move forward, move forward. So this one here is an escalation process that we had for pay system issues. If an employee gets a call, or a call goes to the client contact center, or to our pay officers in the regions, this is the process. So they receive the case. Again, how they receive the case, don't care. It can be a phone call, it could be an email. They just say, you start with receive case. It goes to the service desk, they send an email to the next group down below, and the process follows. You can see here there's an exception decision that's made, and the 3 types, and then they keep moving forward, and then another exception process, and they go through advise employee, and then we move down to sending out emails, etc. I won't read the process, but this is what's proposed. It has been approved already by the DG. So we have this process in place now, and it is being used when we process calls and escalation of cases. One thing I wanted to point out there, it says advise employee and then close case. So advise employee, again, I'm not going down into detail to click on how we advise employee. The employee gets advice.
That's level 5.
Yeah, that's level 5. So we don't tell you how, but it's understood that the employee will be advised either via phone call, via message.
Not important.
But yeah, they're just advised. And that's basically what I process from a business point of view. Now, I know last time we had questions about linking them back to certain objects, but my job is really very basic, and that is to map out the business process. Now, we're going to be looking at business architecture in PSPC soon, so hopefully I'll be able to link these maps up with other business process and business context and business artifacts within PSPC as we develop our business architecture framework. that would be great, and that's coming soon. But right now, my goal is to map out processes that are difficult or important, such as the 2018 collective agreement that Elizabeth mapped out. Just to tell you on that alone, I think there's 44 maps. 47 maps, which are all linked and decomposed, and you can go through each process as we go through the process. This one here doesn't have any decomposition on it. It was relatively straightforward, but there are complex ones. The reconciliation with MRQ and CRA, I'm assuming are going to have at least 20 maps each, with decompositions in there as well, as we try and reconcile tax information and the processes to inflow. How that works is ongoing right now. So that's my current mapping process project, if you want to call it. I save a copy in GC Docs as a PDF. The reason for that is some people don't have ability to publish QualiWare, or can't see it or can't access it, but if I send them a link to a static PDF, they can actually pull it up quickly and look at, oh yes, that's what I'm supposed to do. As well as training. When I'm training new employees coming in, I can click on the PDF, and the PDF process that we use with SSC allows you to click and decomp your maps quickly. Yes, it's a little bit more cumbersome page by page, but it does allow quick training on business process maps.
Great.
Finally, the other thing that we're doing is we're also looking at other things to map, not necessarily straight business processes per se, but things like updates to onboarding, for example. So when my team gets a request, most of the time it's business related, like MRQ, a CRA, payroll. But I get requests sometimes to say, we're having trouble with onboarding new hires. Can you map out the process? So as this becomes more and more widely known, I'm getting requests such as those for simple business processes that we didn't think of as essential, but hey, maybe there is a way to onboard people faster. And let's sit down and look at the process. So there is added value in doing this, and QualiWare provides the means and tools to quickly sit down with a group of stakeholders and map it out and share the information. And then you can say, hey, yes, we can improve the onboarding process. I didn't even think of that as a business process, but it is. As I was focused more on the pay system and pay implementations and tax implementations that we're working on now. So that's basically my summary. So thank you for going through all this avec moi, Cécile, and making sure that we had the presentation up correctly.
Thank you, Earl. Appreciate that.
And I can answer them.
So actually, Eric was asking about getting a copy of the slide. So from what I heard you say just a moment ago, it's up on GC Docs.
Yes, in our folders, yes.
I'm not, so if you, can you share that across department?
No, it doesn't go across department.
No, it's only located in PSPC's GC Docs repository. But
okay. So Eric, on our website, on our website, Eric, the page that you registered on, there was a link to download the slides. So I'll just quickly show you if I can. I'm going to close my email so that you're not all looking at my email. If you go to the CloseReach website, everybody, if anyone is interested in getting a copy of Earl's slides, we put them on the landing page for the user group meeting registration, and you can download both documents there.
Mm-hmm. I don't mind you downloading the process modeling framework, but I did want to point out it's only a draft framework.
Yep.
It's not approved by TBS. We worked in conjunction with TBS to create it for HR to pay transactions. Mm-hmm. So I just want to be crystal clear that it's not a TBS approved framework in any standards. If each business, CBSA or DND want to use the tool to its full extent and use all the possible gateways, I mean, feel free. We just decided to modify it from 116 to about 50 for ease of use.
But
And really,
Lisa at TBS does know that we're sharing
Yeah.
this, though. We did notify.
Yeah.
Earl,
if you want to,
Earl, I'll share something with you that I saw years ago from an organization who did something similar. And this is in the days before we had the dynamic web publishing. So they actually printed a little booklet out that they gave to people, and it had a page on it that was a legend. And it showed all of the most commonly used symbols and what they meant. But you can actually do that in the published content for QualiWare. So just as when you publish the stuff, you've got a diagram tab and you might have a RACI tab and things like that, you can actually create a legend tab and put the symbols up there and what they mean to your user community. So that anytime, and you can make that a standardized tab so that anytime you're showing that kind of model, that Legends tab will be right there. So that, you know, we'll explain to people what the different things mean. So that's one technique you might use to share some of this. So that when people are actually looking at published content, you know, if you do give them web user licenses, then there would be a tab right there with a legend that explains what the different gateways mean, or the different symbols on that diagram. That's one technique that I've seen another QualiWare customer use. The other thing, in terms of onboarding, you may want to consider using the customer journey map. You can actually create. Now, it doesn't look like your model, but it has the steps in a process. The interesting thing about it is in the web publisher, it can be animated. So it could walk a person going through the onboarding process, through the different steps, and at a particular step, pop up a form that they might have to complete or show them how to complete it. It might pop up a video or a PowerPoint at the different onboarding steps. You can actually use that as a training and onboarding tool, and that's a standard out-of-the-box diagram, the customer journey map. So something to consider.
Okay, Kevin, thank you for that. I'll look at that tomorrow, actually, since I have some time during the day, but no meetings. I can take a look at that on QualiWare.
Yeah.
Thank you.
all right. Here we go. Okay. Marius, did you have a question? Okay. Eric, let me know if you're able to get those slides. I don't know if, Earl, do you want to update this first slide that just, draft for internal use only, or are you okay with this cover slide that says draft?
There's a comment on the page, the 4.7, that has like inserted comments. Those need to be removed before you share it.
Yeah.
I'll show you, Cecile, what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we haven't updated this with Treasure Board since then, so we've just been mapping.
Okay, let me know. Thank you.
Cecile, I have a couple of quick comments, if I could.
Sure, absolutely, Eric. I wasn't sure if your hand was raised because you wanted the slides or if you had something that you wanted to jump in with. Go ahead.
Both. Thank you so much. So thank you, Earl. That was excellent. So Eric Sheik at D&D with the QuiDi group. So we use business process management and create a lot of first level, second level, down to work instruction level business process models. We don't use BPMN that much, but we use a quasi version of it. But a couple of comments on what you produce. This is really excellent stuff, and I don't know in the standard or in your BPMN reference material that is there a rule of thumb on the number of activities that should be on one map. We with our experience, we've seen that if there's anything more than 10 activities on one map, it becomes a little bit cumbersome. So we go to a secondary or a tertiary level so that we can have some sort of I guess, a better user experience when they actually open a document and they don't get overwhelmed with the number of activities in one map.
Amen.
Correct, Eric. Correct. We do that as well. If we're finding out that you've got 10 to 12 activity boxes in a swim lane, you might want to look at that and say,
we do
can
try
we
to
make
decompose.
this? Yeah.
Yeah,
we do
try to decompose, but sometimes users are adamant about the fact that they want it to look a specific way, despite our best recommendations. Sometimes we have to go, fine.
Absolutely. Another quick comment.
Tenants are our guideline.
Yeah, good. Another quick one is so you go from west, from west to east on your workflows and your swim lanes.
We tried.
So I can just anticipate what you're going to say. You try going from north to south, and we were west to east guys before, and we found that when you get on one window and you are moving the screen to the east, and you're also moving it to the south, it's cumbersome sometimes with the mouse wheel. So you're also using the mouse, but then the mouse wheel, so it gets a little cumbersome. So we found that users have a better experience if they go from north to south. And we just started, we switched twice actually, back and forth, and then we ended up staying north to south.
Yeah, one of the things we deal to tackle that is we expand and minimize as required, but also when I use the nice QualiWare feature that resizes your window quickly, and then you can either zoom in or zoom out. But the idea of my map, the one I showed you, is actually quite busy. Most of the maps that we have that Elizabeth drew are not that busy because we do a lot of decomposition, so that the person should be able to view the entire map on the screen, similar to what you saw here, and you don't have a lot of scrolling in and out. If you can do it that way, it might save time, but I haven't tried the top-down model. That might be interesting to test.
Yeah.
We did try it in the beginning.
Oh, you did.
Oh, there you go. And you didn't like it. That's fine. It's a user experience.
The users preferred the left to right versus the up and down, actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
And last quick comment. Listen, this was really interesting stuff, and it's quite user friendly. Your document. So we created a similar document to onboard the clients, because what we found is, so we work in a highly technical, scientific laboratories, test organization, and a lot of technical people that look at business process management as a really different language that they can't really relate to. They're used to textual documentation step by step, and all of a sudden they start following this workflow, and they get confused quite easily. So what we've found is that there's an onboarding activity, there's a client buy-in, a process, and a big communication campaign plan that goes behind your implementation. And to win the hearts and minds of the culture, it's very important that we found that business process management, the tool of QualiWare, it took a little while for people to get it and to understand how to maneuver and walk through that roadmap. And then, with the dynamic publishing capability now, that if you click on an activity or you hover over an activity, you get the description and depth of that activity, and maybe a textual component, ability to print, that kind of thing. So it was really a cultural shift and a buy-in process to make sure people are able to absorb this type of notation and convention as a whole, fundamentally.
Yeah, that's interesting, because one of the comments that we got is when we were mapping with the Pay Center is, why aren't you using Visio? Why are you using this tool? And we showed them the tool. Elizabeth actually traveled out there to show them how we do BPMN to map out their Pay Center processes. And train them. And then unfortunately they said it was too cumbersome and went back to Visio. And I'm sitting there going, now you're going to have to convert all your Visio maps into QualiWare and import and export, and why are you just not mapping it internally? So we found that that was probably maybe a lack on my part to keep pushing the case of using QualiWare rather than Visio.
I have bi-weekly meetings with them
I know,
week,
but they
every
didn't
other
do
week
it.
to answer questions and support them. They opted to go that route, and that was their decision.
Yeah, but it goes to show you that it's not easy for some people to give up the flow charting. One of the things that we do right away, I know Elizabeth does this when she's meeting a group of stakeholders. She explains that I am taking your instructions and we're going to model it. So I just want to know your process. If they have it already in a Word document or Excel, we can use that to start and create the processes
Source document.
as a source document. And then when they see these, pages of Visio in a process flow diagram, they can go through it a lot easier. So we try and use the source material first and build it ourselves without consulting the client. We just say, thank you for this document, we're going to build it. And then when we go back, we reiterate. The problem sometimes we do run into is one person will be the subject matter expert, may not be there, send somebody else and say, no, that's not how it works. And then they change it because they're used to viewing the process differently. So we've run across that several times when you have to have 3 or 4 or 40 versions of a process.
Yeah.
It sits there. But one of the things that we like is we say, give us your source documents the way you do it now, any templates you have, and then we use that to build the foundation. And then we also get to understand the process and we say, okay, this should be decomp. This is a reiterative process. This is the runaway process. It doesn't end anywhere because the user hasn't documented when the actual event ends. Or this is a very systematic process, and we can put in triggers and wait time so that we can narrow the amount of work we have to do. And I think that's...
We find that the facilitation sessions, though, are when not only we get a better understanding and we get an update on the source material, but the people in the room actually, it kind of breaks down the silos because you've got everybody at the plate and they have no idea what somebody else might do. In the mapping, the last mapping that I did for PSPC for PAB, I had 2 people that had worked together for over a decade, and they did the process completely differently and ended up with the same result. And that was interesting because they had no idea until they actually saw it mapped out. When they see it written down on paper, it really wasn't the same thing. They noticed it when I was putting Post-it notes on a wall and going, and then what do you do? And then what do you do? And then they figured it out.
Thank you very much. That was excellent.
Interesting. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much, guys. That was good. Any other questions, comments on this particular topic before we move on?
Yeah, just one quick question.
I see Anne Beausoleil joined, and she's the new manager of business architecture at PSPC. So if she wants to introduce herself.
Oh, thanks, Earl. Appreciate that.
Hi,
and then Dan has.
It's Anne Beausoleil. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's great. Yes, so my name is Anne Beausoleil. I'm really looking forward to exploit as much as what Earl has already done. And as he said, we're currently in the process of developing our business architecture framework, which is hoping to really map out the top piece so that Earl's maps can sort of meet us in the middle. Obviously, there's a bit of a culture shift that needs to occur with QualiWare. I think there's a level of comfort that needs to be built within the organization. And I'm really pleased that when I joined, there's already some level of expertise in the system, and we'll be using that to hopefully continue to promote the value of QualiWare and what business architecture can do for the organization. So more to come from PSPC on that front. So thanks a lot for giving me an opportunity to say hi.
Thank you, Anne, and thanks for pointing that out for me, Earl. I hadn't noticed that she joined. So welcome to the user group meeting, Anne. Nice to have you join us. We have these monthly, and we'll look forward to having you start joining in. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Dan, I think you had a question before we move on.
Yeah, just a quick question, just on the decision you made on the models you use. So you had said that you used the business process network to do your process or your level 1, and then you used the business process diagram, which is the BPMN, to do your sub processes level 2. Do I have that correct?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so did you give any consideration to use Archimate to do your process level 1, or did you just choose to use the out-of-the-box business process network from QualiWare to do that?
No, we use the out-of-the-box QualiWare tools, symbols, actions, etc. I didn't really go into Archimate because I don't know how to use Archimate for one, but we just use the out-of-the-box 2 items, and they're linked together. So if you look at the business process network, you'll get the level 1, and then as you go through each diagram on that, you will decompose into the business process diagrams levels 2, 3, and 4. Yes.
Yeah, when we started too, it was a pilot just to see if PAB was going to go the route of QualiWare. And from the pilot, which ended up being a map dealing with union dues, it was a collaboration that I did between CBS and PSPC. We immediately jumped into the fire, and I ended up doing 4 major maps between collaboration PSPC and TBS, and then the group started to grow. I was the only one working on the project from 2017, and in 2018, multiple people joined onto the team, so then we were able to keep going. And to be quite honest, we were just in such a hurry to produce the maps to prove the validity of the tool. We just jumped right out of the box.
Okay, no, perfect. Thanks.
So actually, so I have a question. I actually work with Dan, so that's funny that we're feeding off of each other here. So when you talk about you just jumped off and decided to go with it and you had all these people on board, did you feel that you had to have some sort of governance about which models you were going to use? Was that just an internal sort of grassroots kind of movement when, you looked at the tool and you went, you know what, these models work for what we need to do. BPMN is a standard. Let's just go with it. I'm just curious about the departmental governance around that decision.
Right. Well, the presentation that Earl did, actually, that was myself and another consultant meeting with TBS on a regular basis and creating that document, because we were trying at that point to decide as a group what would be the best standard to use. And BPMN was what the popular decision was, so that's what we went with. And then from there, we just decided what features in BPMN we would use between TBS and PSPC. So yeah, it was just as a collective group, it was like, okay, it looks like the pilot's a go. It looks like, it was funny. I turned around and before I knew it, I had 7 topics that people wanted mapped and I needed people. And so as they started throwing resources our way, I had to kind of we made a decision as a group and we went with it. And we've continued doing so. Like I said, the project started in 2017.
So it was more of a grassroots as opposed to a departmental decision to go with that type of modeling.
Absolutely. And I mean, when we first started the project, it was looking at business process mapping, online tools in general, and then we narrowed it down to CloseReach.
Or to QualiWare, yeah. Perfect.
The other thing about that time frame is at that point in time, the Archimate meta model and the Archimate standard was not very advanced.
No.
It was really oriented towards the IT side and not much on the business side, 4 years ago. So, that's obviously a contributor as well, because of when the decisions were made.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually. Thank you.
The only other thing I would add in is that when we map, we're mapping the as-is process. The other half of my job is to look at the 2B and lean it. That's why I've been speaking with Mike in regards to that. So what we produce is as is, but of course everything changes. The escalation procedure may change, and so when we look at the procedure, how can I eliminate non-business value activities or waste, as it's called in lean? How can I improve this process to make it less cumbersome, to make it quicker? So I use QualiWare and I look at my maps and say, why are there 6 steps here? Why do you have to hand this off to this person, this person, this person? And then I have 3 handoffs, and I'm like, why can't this be done this way and only have 1 handoff, thus improving your process map? So they are useful for that. And as I said, I've been speaking with Mike and I've seen his demonstrations on Lean, which is pretty cool, and have proposed that for my Lean team. So a lot of mapping that goes on right now is actually from Lean. My Lean services team will sit down and look at the process. So I was talking about MRQ and CRA. We're doing the as is right now, and we want to improve that process simply because the reconciliation is about 2 years behind, and we have to try and catch up on that process. But then I'm looking at it from a Lean point of view and say, how can we improve the efficiency going forward? So doing the maps in QualiWare, and I can actually see the process steps, makes it a lot easier to sit down with my Lean hat, turn around and say, okay, now I've finished modeling, how can I improve it? So this is one of the added benefits of working with Mike and seeing how QualiWare can do Lean, but also just thinking of it from a BPMN modeling guide to say, look, you have all these processes, perfectly legitimate processes. They work. This is how we're going to do the collective agreement update. Guess what? I'm going to be looking at that collective agreement update 2 years from now and saying, how can we improve it even better? And looking at that whole process again, even though there's 44 maps or 47 maps, according to Elizabeth, how can I get that and look at that? So that's usually sometimes not talked about, is that people map a map and say, yeah, here's a process, but you have to go back and look at it again and say, how can you improve it? Has things changed? Has there a new system? And how do I actually interact with other artifacts, which I'm going to be looking with Anne in business process modeling, in business architecture. So I can tell you right now that I brought up pay architecture, and my directors are now asking more questions about architecture, business architecture, and how we can improve that competency within PABs. So it's coming, but it's quite fascinating to look at a map that was produced and say, well, we have to change it now because this is improved, or this system is no longer redundant, or this system, sorry, is not redundant, but this system has been decommissioned. Now we're using a new gateway, so instead of my key, we're using GC account. Let's change that. So they can't be static, right? That's one of the values I find in the maps, that and when you can see it go through flow by flow, you can see where things can change quite quickly, and you can knock off processes by looking at it in a lean lens.
People change processes every 5 days, feels like.
Great. Okay, super. Thanks very much, guys. Good discussion. Anything else on this topic before we move? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is me. I wanted to give you all an update on where we are. Last fall, we let everyone know that we were going to be starting to reach out to you to collect feedback and input for QualiWare on their product. We want to consolidate and present to them as one group feedback on their product, ideas for new features, ideas for enhancements, or any other issues. So I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes today just to give you an update as to where we are. And, if anybody has any questions or comments to add in, please feel free to do so. And once I'm done, we've got one last thing from Kevin to discuss before the end of the meeting. So I sent out to all of our Government of Canada clients that are using QualiWare a request with a spreadsheet a little while ago, it was back in November, I believe, asking for input, and I received responses back from CBSA, CRA, PSPC, and Shared Services, and we're in the process of meeting with those teams to validate what the input has been and to go through a ranking exercise. And when I say validate, what I mean by that is for our understanding, to make sure that we, CloseReach, understand what the particular item is that's being commented upon, and just to make sure that we're clear on what that is. And then we've gone through and done a low, medium, high ranking. We are also expecting input from DND and ESTC. Both have been in contact with me, and I know that they are working on providing their input into this process. We also received some input from the QualiWare Community of Practice that is led up by Alexandra Dubé and Dan Hallen, and they provided me with some input as well to be included, so that will be included also. One thing to note, some of the feedback received as we meet with people and talk to them, it's apparent that it's on versions that are no longer supported by QualiWare, and the issues that are being identified are resolved in current versions of QualiWare. So I just wanted to point that out. We received, I bucketed some of the information. I'm not going to go through the exhaustive list, and I'll explain why. But we received input for new features. We received input on enhancements, and we received input on things that are not working. And as I went through and started to look at what we got from everyone, there are some common things. So I just put them in here as examples of some of the types of things that we've received feedback on. And the intention is that once we've finished with meeting with PSPC and then also receiving DND and ESTC's feedback, we'll consolidate everything and send it out to all of the participants for their final review before we submit it to QualiWare. This initial phase has taken a bit longer than we originally expected, but I expect that subsequent sessions will go quicker as we've gone through this initial process already. So some of the input received to date, again, I'm not going to go through an exhaustive list. The ability to configure the dialog layout to constrain values in one dropdown based on the value in another field, providing an option for content consumers to select certain annotation options for the visualization of diagrams, the ability to interface content to and from Irwin and Eris, just some of the examples of new features that we received in our feedback. Under the enhancement section, adding a column in the QEF sessions tab to indicate who the repository session belongs to, identify error messages produced within QEF. They're not very descriptive, so help to isolate the problem by providing more descriptive language, clearer error messages that will help point out the problem and help resolution of issues. Facilitating the QEP translation process and having a standard out-of-the-box, elements available in French when configuring QEP. Some examples. Also, some common things were identified. Fixing the current identified bugs and providing visibility of the status of those. Improving the diagram drawing ergonomics. Providing better user documentation, which I'm sure is no surprise. More detailed documentation on out-of-the-box diagrams and templates. Information on how to configure the web. And properly set up licensing, groupings, etc. Looking for best practices with examples. Making it easier to find things on the Center of Excellence. A search engine doesn't seem to work consistently, and it's difficult sometimes to narrow the search down and find the things that you're looking for. Other common things are adhering to accessibility requirements for the QEP interface within the Government of Canada. That's going to be an issue for everybody. It's going to be a common piece of feedback that was received. Error messages in QLM being vague. So for example, when trying to use a relationship connector that doesn't follow the rules of Archimate, the error just says graphic syntax error, and it doesn't provide enough information. Providing statistical usage of usage data in the tool. So for example, the number of users logged in per day, logged in per hour, peak periods, performance metrics, response time, number of sessions, license utilization, etc. So the whole idea in the administrative tool of providing more information on the usage of the tool and server statistics as well was a common comment that we received. So in terms of next steps, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to we have one more meeting to have for feedback that we've received with PSPC, and then we're expecting to receive DND and ESDC's feedback, and we'll have a validation meeting with them. So I'm expecting by hopefully mid-February to have this information sent off to QualiWare as one consolidated unit. We'll be sending all of that out to you for final validation before it gets submitted to QualiWare. And then, of course, the intention is that this is a regular ongoing practice, that we provide regular updates from QualiWare, and we provide regular input to QualiWare, so we continue this particular cycle. Any comments, questions about what I presented?
Yeah, hi Cecile, it's Deanna Campbell from D&D.
Hi Deanna.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I had a question. First of all, I was wondering who the contact at D&D is for this request. And second of all, between QualiWare, the Community of Excellence, and CloseReach, in terms of putting in requests, should we still be looking at all those avenues or going more towards this consolidation?
If you have something,
I guess specific things would go through QualiWare and the generic would come through you. Is that kind of the way you hope to do it?
I think, so if I can jump in on that, and I think I understand what you're asking. So first of all, the contacts at D&D were Steve Challenor and Vince Cannell.
Okay.
So I contacted them and received their commitment to participate in this process, and Vince is leading it up.
Okay.
Eric Sheik from D&D here. We have not seen any of that correspondence. I don't recall seeing any of that. So maybe we'll reach out to Vince and Steve and see if they've sought out the comments from all the other ones. But we haven't been solicited.
It's okay, Eric. We haven't, as a group, talked about it. I brought it up, so they're aware. It's, but I don't know how it's going to proceed in terms of across the department. I'll have to follow up with Vince on that, but I'll bring it up again.
Yep, thanks.
So we're coordinating things through the primary and secondary contacts identified for each department and technical contacts identified for each department. How they deal with it internally in their departments, that's out of our control. But part of the reason for raising it here is to make everybody aware of what's going on, so that they can make sure that their input is included.
And Deanna, what I would suggest, so for the other part of your question, is continue to follow your normal process for submitting anything to do with QualiWare. If you have an enhancement request, if you have new feature request, if you have a bug, continue your normal process. Go through CloseReach support, and we will submit those things on your behalf. this is meant as a consolidation of all of those things. So I guess I don't want to call it generic because that's not quite the terminology I'm looking for, but we wanted to have the ability to have one voice to speak to QualiWare as a group, to raise the visibility of some of the requests that are coming. So that is the route behind going through this process.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea, and I'm really glad you're doing it.
Unique relationship with QualiWare, just because you were our first very, very large customer, and because of the commitment that D&D made in terms of helping along with various parts of tool improvement in the past. So you've had a unique, so D&D as a department has had a unique path to QualiWare on some support issues that other departments have not had. So this is our way of giving all of those other departments voices, but we want to include D&D in that voice as well.
Yeah, so our intention is not to change your process, Deanna, at D&D, but we want to include what you guys are experiencing and looking for with the rest of the government of Canada so that we present it all as one consolidated group.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea, and I'm really happy you're doing it. I think this just comes from, we had a question last week about, the different ways of requesting changes and things. And sometimes the user, I think this process will enable some of the generic requests to come through more. I'm sorry, I'm using the term generic. It's probably not the right term. Let's say
common?
Broader,
yes.
Common
Yes.
elements.
Yes.
In a way that the clients feel that they have a voice, because they do send requests through us, and sometimes it takes a while to get that actual item done based on many factors and priorities. And I think they were kind of looking for a way for a voice, and so they one of the topics came up about the community of excellence, if that should be another route to ask questions. But I think between what you're doing and how we go directly to QualiWare for specific requests, I'm guessing is probably adequate. They probably don't want to have a third way. But if they do, we're happy to know about it, and I'm happy to let others know about it. So I'm referring to the community of excellence on the QualiWare site as a possible third option.
Yeah, the Center of Excellence, the QualiWare Center of Excellence, is really intended as a, it's a knowledge base. There's, search capabilities. There is a community of practice within the Government of Canada that Alexandre Dubé and Dan Howen are chairing. And we want to certainly receive input from that community of practice and all of our government clients, plus our other clients as well, to present to QualiWare as one voice to raise the visibility on some things.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Deanna. Any other comments, questions on this, folks, before I pass things back to Kevin? Okay, great. And also, I will take the opportunity to once again thank the departments who've participated in this so far. I know Kevin and I both recognize that you all have lots and lots and lots of work on your plates, and we do appreciate very much you taking the time to put this together and to meet with us, sometimes a couple of times, to make sure that we went through the list and fully understood what you were asking. So thank you very much. Okay, Kevin, over to you.
Only a couple of times that it takes too long, and it's usually because I'm doing too much of the for talking. So, Protected B cloud update. We are providing cloud environments for a number of departments right now. Global Affairs being one, ESDC being another. These environments are not currently Protected B, and actually we have another agency, Canada Council for the Arts, that will be not in a QualiCloud QualiWare QualiCloud environment, but in a CloseReach cloud environment. So these environments right now are not Protected B. So we are working out with a local provider here in Ottawa to be able to provide a Protected B envelope for running QualiWare. And in terms of an update there, we're actually at the point where we're finalizing pricing, and the paperwork between CloseReach and the company that's going to be providing that, RCGT, Raymond Chabot, Grant Thornton Consulting, is with the lawyers. So it's going back and forth between our lawyers. So we're very close actually to having that in place. Our goal is to, once the paperwork is in place, to really highly automate this service in terms of being able to stand up a QualiWare environment, a standard QualiWare Protected B environment on Azure very quickly, so that we can meet the needs of different organizations that have asked for for the ability to do this. So this is in keeping with the government's public cloud focus, and again, having all of it provided locally, through resources and organizations in the Ottawa market, I think only works to everyone's benefit. We are still working with QualiWare about being able to get their QualiCloud environment Protected B certified. So there's some things there that we're still working with, but CloseReach, we're looking at what the needs of our customers are, the government departments, and whether that solutions provider is QualiWare or RCGT Consulting. From our perspective, to be honest, we don't care. We just want the right kind of environment to meet the needs of the departments that are asking us for this service. So I expect that in a week to a week and a half, we'll have everything through the legal side of things, and then and we should have the pricing finalized at that point as well, and then we can start to market and make this available. Our current, our largest environment right now in the cloud, which is ESDC, we're working on an extension for their cloud environment so that they have a contingency to allow us to get this new environment stood up properly. So now some good progress happening here, and I think that having the ability to have that Protected B environment for any department that requires it, either on a single tenant basis or on a lower cost multi-tenant basis, will benefit the various government organizations that we're dealing with. So if anybody has any questions about that, happy to answer them. I guess not.
All right, and our cloud environment is growing. We have the CPO team joining in the cloud too.
Yes, CPO will be coming into into our CloseReach cloud environment. So that'll mean two organizations, well, three actually, but Canada Council for the Arts, use it with their CBP implementation, Collaborative Business Planning, which is the QualiWare add-on that's been developed, as well as CPO for implementing their ISO quality management system. So, and we have another 10 as well.
Okay. All right, everybody. Any other questions, comments, topics that anybody wants to bring up?
Okay.
Going once, going twice. Good. Okay, our next user group meeting. Yes.
Can I just have a quick question? Don't know if it's a dumb question, but in terms of, you said a QualiWare cloud environment, is that just so Canadians can go through versus, I'm guessing, pardon me, I meant a CloseReach cloud environment versus a QualiWare cloud environment? The distinction, is that because you're going towards a protected B? Is that what you're pointing out?
So the QualiWare cloud environment is supported by QualiWare and CloseReach. Because QualiWare is involved with that, and their people do not have Government of Canada clearances, there's only certain kinds of information that can be or should be put in that environment. The cloud environment that CloseReach is providing directly is supported only by CloseReach, and CloseReach is top secret, protected B, and most of our people have secret clearance. So there's, different organizations have different needs in terms of, how support for that environment might be provided. Once we get the RCGT consulting protected B environment in place, it will be a combination of RCGT and CloseReach that are providing support for that environment. And because all of our people have Government of Canada clearances, it will still fall within the protected B envelope. That's the part that we're still working with QualiWare about in terms of getting the QualiCloud environment to a protected B level. But I would expect that the RCGT environment would be available sooner if we can get the legalese and the funding stuff out of the way.
Okay, thank you.
Anna.
Thanks, Anna.
Okay, everybody, our next user group meeting is going to be Monday, February 22nd at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. As I've mentioned previously, if you have ideas or suggestions for topics for our user group meeting that you would be interested in hearing more about, please feel free to let me know, and we can add them
within your environment that you want to share with everyone else.
Or if you're doing something, yes, absolutely.
We're very interested. I mean, in the past, the SDC has shared information about their governance structure, things that they're doing. CBSA has presented as well, and National Defense. So we're really quite interested in sharing that, that information across, through our user group across the government. So in an interactive kind of forum. So we are looking for presenters as well.
Yes, exactly, absolutely. Thank you. And speaking of presenters, thank you again to Earl and Elizabeth for the presentation. Much appreciated. And we'll see you all next time. Everybody knows where our website is. We also have a YouTube channel, as you have heard about previously. And we have, find us on social media too, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course there is also the QualiWare Center of Excellence. Thanks very much everybody for your time, appreciate it, and we'll see you all back here in 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
See ya.
And hopefully the lockdown will be done.
Hopefully. Haha. Thanks everyone.